And now, sitting in the Attila the Hun chair, former George Mason University Department chair, but still handsome, charming, and highly sought after by the ladies, but sadly already spoken for.
Oh, darn it.
Walter E. Williams.
That is right, Johnny Donovan. By the way, I got some email after I did the show last week. And here's the email. I had to straighten you guys out on this. A guy, he says, an avid listener in Seattle. And he said, at the dinner table last night, I used what you said. I was talking about monopolies and how marriage was really a monopoly. And it led to some effects. He was explaining it to his wife. And he was saying that it was a monopoly because they had to close the market to competition. And he was going to be apathetic because he was too lazy to do anything about it. You know, have to go out and be nice. So he might as well stay with his lady. And he said, he told his wife, I'd never heard this term before, that if they got divorced or something like that, they would go out and market again, she would have to pudgy down. Now, I've never heard that phrase before, pudgy down. I guess it means lose weight. But anyway, he's in trouble. He says his wife hasn't spoke to him for quite a while. But look, guys out there, a lot of guys get in trouble trying to be me. Now, it is difficult to be me. I did not become me overnight. It took 66 years. Well, you guys trying to do what I do, you get in trouble. Now, Mrs. Williams, I raised Mrs. Williams properly. And you guys are trying to do that, and you're just going to, I don't know, you're going to have trouble. Anyway, let's go to something more important, more enlightening. You know, in the first hour I said, we were talking about the minimum wage, and I promised to explain to you how a law such as the minimum wage discriminates against less preferred people. And less preferred people might be low-skilled people. It could be racial minorities. I don't mean less preferred in the absolute sense, but less preferred as seen in the eyes of some other people. Matter of fact, any kind of price control discriminates against less preferred individuals. Now, why? How does the minimum wage law discriminate? Well, before I explain it to you, I'll give you some additional information. There's an excellent book written some years ago, maybe about 1990, 1991, an excellent book, and it was called South Africa's War Against Capitalism. And the author was, of course, Walter Williams. And in that book, I give example after example of how racist unions in South Africa were the major supporters of minimum wage laws for blacks. That is, unions, racist union members that would never have a black as a member, they were the major supporters of minimum wage laws for blacks. In South Africa, they call it rate for the job laws, which is the same as minimum wage laws. Now, why? Well, because minimum wage laws are one of the most effective tools in the arsenal of racists everywhere. And the reason why is because it lowers the cost of discrimination. Now, let me give you an example. Let's not use race. Let me give you an example. Suppose you said, well, in the interest of fairness, we're going to have an equal stake law. And let's say right now, you go to the supermarket, and let's say chuck steak is a less preferred cut of meat than filet mignon. It's less preferred. People don't like it as much. But how come chuck steak sells? Well, what chuck steak says, you're walking down the aisle with your shopping cart, and chuck steak says to you, psst, I'm not as tasty as filet mignon, I'm not as tender, but I only go for $3 a pound, and filet mignon goes for $10 a pound. That's what we call in economics a compensating difference. Now, imagine that somebody said, well, that's not fair. That's not fair that chuck steak has to sell for $3 a pound, and filet mignon gets $8 or $10 a pound. So let's make an equal steak law. Now, that is requiring chuck steak to sell for the same price as filet mignon. Then you go to the supermarket. What do you see? You see loads of chuck steak. Chuck steak is unemployed. Why? Because you've made the cost of discriminating against chuck steak zero. That is, a filet mignon is $10 a pound and chuck steak is $10 a pound. It works the other way when you have price controls, price ceilings, like rent controls. Rent controls contribute to discrimination. And the reason why is because some people can't bid a higher price for what they buy. And not allowing people to charge lower prices for what they sell or charge higher prices for what they buy handicaps the less preferred person. Let me give you another example, babe, because you might not be related to it. Suppose you see a fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking man married to a beautiful young lady. What kind of prediction would you make about that man's income? You would guess that it's pretty high. And what's happening? Well, the fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking man is telling you, the beautiful young lady, look, I can't compete for your hand on the basis of a guy like Williams. So I'm going to offset my handicaps by offering you a higher price. Buying her Rolls Royces and taking her out to expensive restaurants, things like that. Now, some of you out there would say, well, is it fair? Is it fair that beautiful young ladies would charge fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking men higher prices than they charge handsome guys like Williams? And you might say, no, it's not fair. So we're going to make a law that beautiful young ladies can't charge fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking men higher prices than they charge handsome men. And after that becomes law, I ask you, what then happens to the probability of a fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking man marrying a beautiful young lady? It goes to zilch. And the reason why is that by having that equal price law, you've denied the guy his most effective means of competing with the more preferred man. And indeed, who would be for such a law? It would be the handsome man, because it would take his competition out of the market. So anyway, whenever you see minimum prices or maximum prices, you know that has to be handicapping less preferred individuals. Okay, so much for that economics lesson, but I want to get something that's maybe a little bit more important, and that is many people in Congress are beating up on George Bush about the 9/11, what he knew and when did he know it. And they really, many of the people with the loudest voices, such as Edward Kennedy, they ought to really be looking at themselves. For example, and this is in Human Events, written by Herbert Rummerstein, and it's in Human Events the week of June 10th. And here in this article it says, on August 17th, the FBI in Minnesota arrested Zacharias Masui on immigration charges after he aroused suspicions and he paid $8,000 in cash to attend flight school. And the FBI seized Masaui's computer and asked FBI headquarters for a warrant under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to download it and tap his phone. They were turned down because under the Foreign Intelligence and Surveillance Act, it requires that to obtain a warrant, they must show the court specific facts to indicate that individuals' activities are in preparation for terrorism. And when did this law come on the books that handicaps the FBI? Well, it came on during the 1970s with the Church Committee. which Senator Edward Kennedy was on, and they wrote laws hamstringing our intelligence community. And they are the ones that are hollering right now, what did George Bush know and when did he know it? And when these people are, in a large part, responsible for making our intelligence less effective than it otherwise might be. Anyway, the article is in Human Events the week of June 10th, and it was written by Herbert Rummerstein, and he was on the, he was a professional staff member in the 70s on the House Intelligence Committee. We'll be back with your calls after this.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Walter Williams sitting in today. By the way, make sure you tune in tomorrow because Professor Milton Friedman is going to join us. He's the Nobel laureate, and he's spoken of as the top economist of the 20th century. And that is quite a distinction. Let's go to Al from New Jersey. Welcome to the show, Al.
Thank you. Last week, about the time you were talking to Dr. Soul, you made mention of the 80% figure that the NBA has now of black players.
Yeah.
And this was due, your thoughts were, to the 50 previous years of discrimination against blacks.
No, I didn't say that.
I would like you to prove that fact.
I didn't say that.
In your next book.
Wait, I didn't say that.
Okay, go. What did you say?
Well, I don't know what I said, but wait a minute. The reason why blacks dominate basketball to the extent that they do is because they can do a 360 slam dunk in your face, and you can't do anything about it.
That's correct.
That's right. It has to do with productivity.
You didn't even discuss the slam dunk, but you said this was sort of payback for the previous 50 years of discriminating against the blacks. Wait! I'm
not going to let you get away with that. I did not say that.
Okay, but listen to my question. My question would be, I would like you to prove, if you could, where this discrimination took place, whether it was in the playgrounds, grammar school, high school. The only place that it took place in my head was in some of the southern schools, the colleges. They wouldn't accept blacks. Other than that, everything was fair game for everybody.
No. Well, look, blacks were not allowed in NBA in 1930s. Now, but the point is...
When did the NBA start?
Oh, 1940s, in the earlier period. Wait a minute. I believe what I said. And I believe you're just plain confused about it. I believe what I said, that if you looked at discrimination in our country or anywhere in the world, most of it occurs in non-profit organizations. And I was saying that colleges and governments are non-profit organizations. Now, I said, where did blacks start entering schools like UCLA, actually, and going to Harvard and going to different other schools? Well, they entered through the money-making segment of the school. That is the sports where there's a lot of money being made. Okay?
That's correct.
You're absolutely. So I'm not sure what you were talking about. And beside, that kind of stuff is not a part of my thinking or language. Francis from Dennis, Florida. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Williams. Regarding the minority student at MIT, I think the issue is how much did the student learn rather than their ranking after successfully completing a course of study.
Well, what I was saying that at MIT, and I don't have the exact figures, but my colleague Thomas Sowell has in his book, that MIT, most of the black students, the average black student that goes to MIT, I believe it's in an engineering school, they score in the top 10% nationally on the quantitative portion of the SAT.
All right.
But their problem is that everybody else is in the top 1%.
Okay.
And so that means they are at the bottom at MIT.
All right.
And so they're handicapped. No, I mean, Many times it's like, what people are doing in the name of affirmative action, it reminds me of the following. That is, say you ask me to teach you how to box.
All right.
And the first fight I get you is with Lennox Lewis.
Yep.
Now, you'll get your brains beaten out before... You might have the potential to be a good boxer, but you'll get your brains beaten out before you learn how to bob and weave. And so many times these black students and Hispanic students, they may have the potential, but you're putting them in a situation that's far too competitive for them at the time. And so, and I think that's cruel. And as I was telling Linda Chavez, that just from a narrow, self-interested point of view, strictly from a black point of view, we have to ask questions like, do we have so many black students who score in the top 10% on the quantitative exam, which is a very, very good position to be in, that we can afford to have them destroyed in the name of multiculturalism, in the name of diversity? Now, what I've had people ask me, they say, well, if MIT or one of these other top schools, if they don't have blacks there, let's say these blacks who score in the top 10%, well, what are they going to do for black students? And I tell the person, that's MIT's problem. That's not black people's problem. It's not black parents' problem to solve the guilt feelings of MIT. And matter of fact, for any parent, and Tom Sowell and some others have said the same thing, that when you're deciding on a college for your kid to go to, you should never you should never enroll him in a college where the average SAT score is 150 or 200 points above your son's, or above your son or daughter's score, because he's likely to be mismatched. Yet people do far better in schools where their scores are far closer to the average. And there's an interesting study that came out that Tom Sowell points out, that at University of Colorado, at the Boulder campus, the flagship campus, there's a 200-point difference between blacks and whites, and the graduation rate among blacks is 39%, and that among whites is 78%. And at the other campuses where it's closer, the graduation rates are virtually identical. We'll be back after these words. We're back, and folks, look, you can check out our previous broadcasts that Rush gave by going to rushlimbaugh.com and joining Rush 24/7. And at the site, you can order great Father's Day gifts, like a subscription to Rush 24/7 and Limbaugh Letter, or you can get a Father's Day gift and give it to me at the site. I deserve a Father's Day gift the way I pay the taxes in our country. Let's go to Rick from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Mr. Williams, it's a great pleasure to speak to you, sir.
Thank you.
You'll excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous.
No, don't be nervous. I'm more nervous than you are.
Oh, I don't know about that. Listen, I have to take a little bit of exception with...
Take a lot.
Well, I'll take a little. With your position on affirmative action. I am Hispanic, and I think that I benefited from affirmative action when I got into Washington University in St. Louis in 1978.
Were you unqualified?
Well, I don't think that I was unqualified. I think that they did lower the bar for me. The reason that I think that I was qualified to be there is because I came from a school that did not provide me the kind of education that other children that I was competing with got.
That might be the reason why you're not qualified.
No, that is not entirely right. See, because the qualification that you're assessing here is whether or not one has enough knowledge to partake in the educational, in the college educational process, not whether one has the intelligence to be there. And unfortunately, if you don't have enough knowledge, then at times you appear not to have the intelligence to be there, even though there's plenty of intelligence there.
Well, look, wait. Well, let's stop. We can a dialogue here. Now, the SAT score, the SAT,
Right.
The test for admission to college, it does not measure intelligence.
It does not.
What it does, it predicts your standing at the end of the freshman year.
Right.
That is your performance in college at the end of the freshman year. And if you cannot read and write and do computation, well, then you're not going to have a very high standing at the end of the freshman year. And that's all that the SAT does. It doesn't talk about intelligence at all.
All right, but you know what the reality is? The reality is that I graduated with a 3.5 average, even though probably my lowest year was my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened?
Are they real grades that you have? Are they affirmative action grades?
No, they are not.
Why?
I took classes along with everyone else, every color.
What I'm saying is that that the teacher could have felt sorry for you.
Oh, I doubt that.
Well, because wouldn't you find that insulting? Wouldn't you find that insulting if indeed that were the case?
Absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about feeling sorry for individuals. We're talking about giving them a slight opportunity to get into a school that they would not normally have gotten into, and just assess whether or not they have the potential to stay there. Now, here's another situation that I think that you should as much take issue with as much as affirmative action, and that's the type of affirmative action that gets kids into school because they're wealthy. As an example, I mean, there's many kids that get into Harvard every year because their last name is Kennedy or you name it.
Or the alumni and stuff like that.
Or their alumni, their father built the building.
What you're saying, here's what you're saying. You're saying, and I've heard people make that argument. You're saying, or you're suggesting, that the most despicable standards for white admittance to colleges should become the norm for minorities.
Absolutely not, sir.
Well, you're justifying it by saying that.
No, sir. So because in the case where the rich white kid is allowed to get in, there was no question asked as to whether he had the intellectual capacity to be there.
Wait a minute, isn't that despicable?
What is?
I mean, that is a guy getting into college just because his father's rich or because his name is Kennedy.
That's repulsive.
Yeah, okay, so what you're saying, you're saying that should be the norm.
Absolutely not, sir.
For Hispanics and blacks.
No, sir, not under any circumstances. I'm saying
you have to
try to make a condition and assess whether a Hispanic or a black kid, because he was put into a school that was not on par with the very wealthy schools of this country.
Wait a minute. That's not the college's job. It's not their agenda.
Whose job is it?
It's damn sure not the college's job. I mean, that is because they're rotten schools. It's not the college's job to repair them. It's the city. It's the local community. It's the state.
They're not acting to repair them. They're acting to allow students in that they could not recognize as being capable of being there.
This is the very thing that Linda Chavez and I were talking about.
I know.
You're saying that we should take these rotten schools off the hook by admitting students who cannot compete.
No, sir.
Or
absolutely.
who do not come up to standards.
I'm a huge believer in the voucher system, sir. Absolutely not. I disagree with you. I think that the public schools in this country are an atrocity. But until such time as we repair them, the individual tragedies that exist in them, it's not their fault.
Well,
it was not my fault that I went to a rotten school.
Well, I'm not saying it's not the college's fault either.
It was not. You're right. It's not. But it's commendable of them to try and repair something that was not my fault.
Well, I don't find it commendable at all. That is, when you got in, that is, there is somebody else denied a seat to make a place for you. Is that right?
No, not in your world. In the way you're describing it, yes. But in the way that I'm describing it, what I'm trying to suggest to you is that we cannot see intelligent kids coming out of urban schools because of the fact that those schools are inadequate. You do not see intelligence.
Wait. At UC Berkeley, at one time at UC Berkeley, they were turning away straight A white and Asian students in order to make room for blacks and Hispanics. What do you think about that?
I think that I don't like quotas, but I do like this. I do like it when a university tries to assess whether a student, for instance, if a student comes out of the worst school in Los Angeles, worst high school in Los Angeles, in the top 1% of his class, is that individual qualified to go into any other school in the state of California? And I think that he is.
No, he's not.
Oh, but you can't punish a kid for giving him a bad school.
Wait a minute. Let's have some reasoning now. Okay, now imagine you are the coach of a track team.
Yes.
At a college.
Absolutely.
Now,
I'll give you the analogy that I think you're going with.
Wait a minute, huh?
Wait
a minute. You're the coach, and you want to win.
Uh-huh.
Now, do you want to know what position that kid came in on his track team, or do you want to know how many minutes it took him to run the mile?
No, you know what I want to know?
I'm asking you, which one?
No, I want to know how fast that kid is, because all I care about is winning as a coach.
That is absolutely
my job to win. But you want to know what would be incredibly ignorant of me to do? To ignore a kid that's never run before and not look at him because of the fact that he's never run before.
Yeah.
And there are kids out there that have never run before that can run faster than those that are prepared in life to run.
Well, so you're saying the Los Angeles Lakers should just hire somebody, even though they did not play basketball, never played basketball, but they should give them a chance anyway.
You're at the extreme end of the spectrum there.
Well, I mean, if it goes at one end of the spectrum, it ought to go at the other end, shouldn't it?
No, sir, it should not, because there's very few people in the world today that can perform at the Laker level. I mean, if there's 0.0001% of the population of the world.
Look, Rick. I think the important thing, the most important thing about our conversation, is that we must do something about the rotten education at the primary and secondary levels of education. And I'm going to have Milton Friedman on tomorrow. He's very, very interested. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about vouchers. We're going to talk about some alternatives to the public school monopoly. And that's where the focus should be. Because you know, you say, well, how come there's not affirmative action for blacks in basketball? Well, they don't need any affirmative action in basketball because there's excellence in basketball. Now, the same thing can happen in the world of academic studies, but kids must be held to standards at lower levels of education, and we should not use colleges to take these rotten public schools off the hook. We'll be back with your calls after this.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Oklahoma City, welcome.
Good afternoon, Walter, and that's not the first time I've ever been called Rush, so don't feel bad.
Okay.
We have a lot of similarities, and I won't go into that. The reason I'm calling from Oklahoma City this afternoon is I heard you speaking earlier about the issue of cigarettes and secondhand smoke.
Mm-hmm.
I had an occasion about a week ago to pull up to a stoplight. I was in the right lane. Up on my left pulls an automobile about 20 years old, little subcompact. And I looked in the car, and there were two gorgeous little children strapped in the back seat. And in the front seat are a mother and dad, and they cannot smoke those cigarettes fast enough. So my question is, they're sitting there poisoning these children with these cigarettes. Who's taking up the kids? Who's protecting their rights?
Well, that's their kids. If it's their kids, it's their responsibility.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, right. That is
okay.
But wait a minute. I mean, who says that
I haven't asked the question
kids are going to die because they smoke?
Well, I guess all of these studies we hear all the time about the evils of smoking must be wrong then?
Well, no. Well, the EPA study that led to the banning of smoking in so many places, that's clearly a fraudulent study. And the Congressional Record Research Unit of the Congress pointed that out.
So if we're going to err, then which side should we err on?
Well, it should be up to individuals.
Oh, so, well, let me ask you this then. If we took the elements of the cigarettes, like the nicotine, the formaldehyde, all these different poisons that go into cigarettes, and we injected that into those kids with a needle, would the state not be on us like quite on right?
No, but nobody's talking about that. I mean, look.
Absolutely, that's the problem.
Look, I've been smoking since I've been 12 years old.
I'm sorry.
I've been smoking since I was 12 years old, and the average person looks at me. I'm 66 years old. I mean, they envy me. They wish they were in the condition that I was in. And it didn't do me any harm. Of course, cigarette, it's always dosage. Do you think a person will get cancer from smoking a half cigarette?
I have no idea, but I'd rather not take the chance.
Oh, okay. Okay, but anyway, the point is, who is in charge of protecting my children? It is me, and it is nobody else's business.
Okay, so if you murdered your children...
Oh, come on. I'm not talking about...
nobody else's business.
I'm not talking... Okay, do you think the government should tell my children what time to go to bed?
I don't have any idea about that. I don't think going to bed is going to kill them.
Oh, well, it's... okay, well, thank you very much for calling in. It's Americans like that is the reason why we're losing our freedoms. They want to turn over the control of our lives, raising our children, to some fat bureaucrats that don't give a damn about our individual children, but just say they do. Welcome, Hal from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mr. Williams. It's a real honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you.
I am in the midst of a career change. I was an airline pilot who got affected by 9/11 and a former Air Force officer, and I was wondering about becoming an economist, and I was wondering your thoughts on how to go about that. I spend all my free time reading guys like Ludwig von Mises and Bastiat and a lot of these economists, and really enjoy it. And I noticed by the quotes on the books from you, I assume that you do too.
Are you familiar with our website at George Mason University?
No.
We have at my particular page we have a whole lot, and I believe the Rush people will put up on his site a link to it, and then I have recommended reading, and then there's a link from my page to our department, to my colleagues, and I have very distinguished colleagues. James Buchanan, Nobel laureate, is on our faculty, and just kind of just look at their list and read through, and you can consider becoming a graduate student at George Mason University.
Okay, I have an MBA already, but and then I just apply through the normal channels.
Yeah, just look at our graduate page, and it gives you the instructions.
Okay.
On what to do.
Okay.
And also click on my site. I have some quotations, and then I have that gift.
The gift?
Yeah, the gift. Just click on gift.
Okay.
And you'll love the gift. I mean, matter of fact, you'll sleep in peace tonight if you download the gift.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
Okay, thanks. Harry, do we have time? Yeah. Shall we take Harry?
Hi, Walter.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
From Little Falls, New Jersey.
Thank you. You made a comment in one of your earlier segments about the president getting hit with this who knew what, when,
yeah.
How. Well, let's apply a little common sense here. Let's put it in the context of the business. This man is the CEO of the biggest business in the universe. Now, if you expect him to know everything that's going on every level, it would be, to me, ludicrous.
Well, the politicians, they're playing games.
Well, it's strictly political.
Yeah.
I mean, the Democrats are looking for anything they can hang their hat on,
yeah.
I believe. And, the blue ribbon panel, they want... This is, and then, sorry to say, but, the people who came out and protested at the White House, for the victims of 9/11, you had the same cast of characters banging the drums for the Democrats. And it kind of shows me just, it's partisan politics at its worst.
Well, of course, and I think that we need to go back, as Herbert Robertstein said in this Human Events article. We need to look back at earlier periods. We need to look back at the Frank Church Commission that was set up in 1978.
There you go.
And the rules and regulations that hamstrung our intelligence agencies. That's what we need to look at.
Well, Walter, let me ask you this. Why or do you think he should ask Congress for a full declaration of war? Why hasn't he?
I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I don't have an answer, but thanks a lot for calling in, and we'll be back with your calls after this.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
We're back, and we're back to the phones. Tim from Carlsbad, California. Welcome to the show.
Dr. Williams, 20th time EIB caller dittos, twice to you.
Thank you.
Anyway, I just wanted to tell you, fairness doesn't exist in nature. Nature, in fact, abhors fairness. So I don't know why people think that it's something that should always be looked for.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think the best that we can get is equality before the law.
Sure, but equality of outcome, as Rush has made the observation time and again, is just not realistic, and it's just not natural.
That's right.
Pure and simple.
Absolutely right. You're 100% on. Let's go to Hal in Melbourne, Florida. By the way, it's not fair that Mrs. Williams has me all to herself. I mean, it's just plain not fair. Welcome to the show, Hal.
It's a pleasure talking with you. The gentleman that called earlier and saying that the rich white kid shouldn't be allowed in, but yet the kids that didn't do well should be admitted to the college is ridiculous. You know, if you're in a disadvantaged school, but yet you have your sights set on MIT, then you shouldn't let that school hold you down. Because if you're going to go there, you should be the valedictorian of that school. You should have a 3.9 average when you come out of there, because if the school can't teach you, then you need to teach yourself, and you should be the top one in your class if that's where you want to go to college. And you can't blame the school, and you can't blame your parents, and you can't blame the community if you can't cut it.
That's right, and I think that we try to blame too many people when ultimately the determiner of our future is we. It's us. It's we who determine our future. Folks, you got to tune in tomorrow. We have a treat. We have Dr. Milton Friedman, Nobel laureate, and the most distinguished economist of the 20th century. Tune in tomorrow.